Hello, world. Welcome aboard, all you ground troops spinning around smartly on the planet. This is the Experiencers Network with Janet Carroll Lessin, Bret Lueder, and your host, Theresa J. Morris. We are all three hosts of our own great places in space, and so we're all driving our own ships, but we've decided to make a tripod and use Esoteric Guide for Bret Lueder and Janet Carroll Lessin Experiencers Network. And mine is Alien Contact Organization, or ACO Club, which you can see written there. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about these people because without them, I wouldn't have any witnesses because most people in the paranormal world are too scared to talk to me. So we've got Bret Lueder here, and Bret is over in California, and he's been with me at least 12 years. Janet Carroll Lessin, more than 12 years, with me since 1993. But Bret's been holding on 2012 and beyond. So we're all authors. We're all in the Authors Club. I run, no fee. Everybody can join on Facebook. And we have UFO Secret Space. Now, today we're concentrating on extraterrestrial experiencers. And Janet Carroll Lessin and Bret Lueder are those that have experienced the life, or they would not be knowing me right now. Because I keep my friends close and my enemies closer. So you tell me what they are. They're humans, I think. So, Bret, why don't you say a couple of things? Because we're going to have Janet telling her story today and sharing some slides with us. But give us a brief rundown real quick.
Okay. Yeah, so I started getting interested in UFOs really when I was a kid, but it was mostly through sci-fi. So I can go back till 5, 6 years old with memories of sitting with my dad on the couch watching Star Trek. And always loved Star Trek. For a long time, I equated my dad with Captain Kirk. And, all through my life, I saw Out on a Limb on the television movie with Shirley MacLaine as she did the astral projection out of her hot tub. I saw that when I was super young. I saw The Legend of Bogey Creek, about that kind of harrowing Bigfoot encounter that they were having in the United States South. And then I saw Chariots of the Gods at the movie theater. And just a really interesting way that got impressed into my brain was earlier in the day, we had some relatives in town. And my family and my mother's sister's family, they were twins. The two families got together and went to the Olin Mills Picture Studio to take a family portrait of both the families. And we were waiting out in the lobby, and the photographer finally called us in. And like a little smart aleck kid, I went up to the Alhambra water bottle and dipped my head under it and tried to take a drink real quick before my mom could see me, and we then run in. But I mistakenly hit the hot side. And so it scalded my mouth and it kind of dripped out. I forget which side. And in the picture, you can see that my one side of my mouth was like red, right? Because it was kind of burned. And then, so I had to sit through Chariots of the Gods with my mouth kind of inflamed and burning. And so I just never forgot Chariots of the Gods. It was like someone was trying to tell me, you need to remember this stuff. So, from then I was always interested, so when Star Wars came out, of course, right? Space 1999, Battlestar Galactica, the original. And then, I think I kind of lost touch with a lot of that as I went through college because other things became more important, like sports and women and beer and that kind of thing. And then it wasn't until 1995, after college, I had a friend who had graduated, moved down to Goleta, California, which is on the coast by Santa Barbara, and also Vandenberg Air Force Base. And he called me up one day and said, hey, Bret, a guy, a coworker, came to me at my workstation and said, hey, you got to look at this link and go check it out. And it was some space on the computer that my friend didn't have clearance for, but this other guy did. And it turned out it was a 32-page document called Operation Majority. And my friend, he's like, you got to come down here and see this. So I took a trip and visited some relatives in LA. On my way back north, I sat down with my friend and we went over this 32-page document and stayed up until late in the hours. The next day, he took me on a tour of Vandenberg Air Force Base, right? As a civilian employee, he could take me on as long as we checked in at the front booth, the front gate. And he said they're going to do a total background check on you as soon as I give them your name. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. You know, at that time, I didn't really understand what that meant. But we toured the base around, and at one point, you know, I went to go to the bathroom, right? We're in the middle of the nowhere, it seems like. And he goes, oh, no, don't do that. He goes, see that mountain peak over there? He says, they're watching us right now. So I'm like, okay, right? So I couldn't go to the bathroom. I had to hold it. So anyway, we saw shipwrecks. We saw old missile silos, gun bunkers, you know, in case of like a Japanese attack on the West Coast back in World War II. So I left that day, right? Had a great tour of Vandenberg. Saw lots of really cool stuff. On the way back home, I had 2 other stops where I showed people my copy of this, what I call the packet, right? It's really Operation Majority, which was released by William Cooper in '89 is what the little copyright date is on the title there. And it had some stuff with John Lear in it. And interestingly for me, at the back end of this document, there was probably 7 or 8 like paragraph size UFO reports. And 2 of them were from Red Bluff, which is like just north of where I am here in Chico, California, just like 45 minutes up the road. And so I thought, wow, this UFO stuff is like right in my backyard. And so on the way home, I ran into a fog bank late that night trying to make it back to Chico. Next thing I remember, my car, I was sitting on the side of the road. My truck was still running, but I was out of gas. I couldn't remember how I got out of gas so quick. And then I drove home, right? And so I'd had a sighting that night earlier, and I've been on several shows where the people are like, "Oh yeah, you've been abducted," and I'm just like, "Well, I'll stay open to that," but I really don't remember anything. And I've had a couple different hypnotherapists try to regress me, and it's just if I did have some kind of experience like that, they weren't able to access it. So you know, I'll stay open to that, but what I do find most fascinating is my interest in UFOs is high. I've read hundreds of books. At this stage, I've interviewed hundreds of people, written hundreds of articles, a couple books out. And one time at the Bay Area UFO Expo, someone came up to me and said, you know, you're not interested in this subject for no reason. And I said, well, right. It's pretty fascinating. This lady goes, no. She goes, you've been on a ship. And so I'm like, oh, well, okay. So that's kind of where it stands for me. If I have been, I don't really consciously know it. But I'll stay open to that. I know I definitely am interested in the subject. And that's why I'm interested in both of you wonderful ladies, because each of you has your own experiences. And I'm just fascinated by that. I'm trying to figure out what this phenomena is and what is my place in all this, so to speak. So,
well, thank you.
that's the short
That was
version.
a great short version. I do know that's a short version because Janet and I have been doing this over 12 years together. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Janet and I. We both together started the Alien Civilizations Exist Alien Contact Organization with some very famous people. The UFO Association was started by Stan T. Friedman, and it was a sort of a back room. We knew each other, and J. Allen Hynek, people like that. But when he came on our show, Janet and I had a wonderful time with him on the TJMRCT radio show, and we built from there. And she met him in person. I did not. I talked to him. I was always on his footsteps. So I went to meet J. Allen Hynek in Louisiana. So Janet's been quizzing me over the years about that. So Janet's as much an experiencer, but she's also a researcher and an author, as well as Bret Lueder. And I guess that's why they're on my inner circle, because I like people that like to challenge themselves and, you know, tell their stories, but also be researchers and interested in connecting the dots and putting people together, because there's more to life than just our everyday, what's happening in our own lives. And so we've decided to keep this going. I'm an out-of-body near-death experiencer, but I was also an investigator, and I have people in the government that know this and people that work with me. And then I have the UFO Secret Space Association, or group, open source on UFO on Facebook. I have UFOHQ.org and ACIRHQ.org for databases. But a lot of people don't understand how to access that data. And we're also working with MUFON and CUFOs and people like that and all their investigators. So we're really advocates of space travel, including with NASA and, of course, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and all those people. But Janet Carroll Lessin and her husband are very well known for the Anunnaki stories. They first got started with some very famous names over in California, actually in the Tantra world before other people were really known for it, and opened up with people such as Tony
Robbins.
Robbins and Deepak Chopra. And I met Deepak Chopra. And what Janet and I found in knowing each other is we shared Stargate to the Cosmos, or the project Stargate we'd both heard about, but we didn't really know we were involved in it, and in Hawaii. And then she came to start my psychic network, which I had filed and actually formed a business named Psychic Network in Hawaii. So that was back in 1993. And she knew Robin, a girlfriend of mine that ran the Psychics downtown Waikiki. And I kept running across her and met her with some other ladies and then some other gentlemen. And it was very odd. We were both in Spiritual World Network. We were just in the same associations, crossing paths. So I'm going to let her tell the short version tonight. Janet, we're at 11 and a half minutes, so you're going to have at least however you want to go tonight. You're recording. Okay. So take it away, Janet Lessin in Maui, Hawaii. Here we go.
This PowerPoint is part of a presentation I did at several different conferences, including up in Toronto. And I'm not going to show the whole thing. This is just a part of it. But so let's just kind of go through it here, just giving some background.
I like that one.
Yeah, there's lots of meetings all throughout the galaxies and universe, and I've been to several of them. Here's just some background stuff while we're talking. Made a lot of information for these things. I was interviewed by Russian television about the mothership. So we're going to go into the mothership. And I wrote a series of books called The Dragon at the End of Time, and I'm still writing them. It's going to take me another 10 years. I hope I live that long. So the first part, we're going to cover the UFOs in the 1950s, and it's kind of funny and campy, and everybody's afraid of them. And, of course, we had the famous flyover in the Capitol in July 12th, 1952. And so we're not going to focus on that. But the background of my story, I used the Campbell's hero's journey, and it has the different phases of when you go on this journey. So phase 1 is the ordinary world. The hero starts with normal life before the adventure, and she's spiritually asleep. So anyway, this is just some background stuff. You can pause it and read it if you want to. Part of the presentation I had, kind of building. And so before I came into my body, I've done a lot of hypnosis, regression, and some journey work, shamanic work, and spontaneous recall, meditation, tantra, and it helped me remember what happened to me. So what I discovered is that I was the miscarriage that my mother had. I started to come into physicality in 1952, but my mother had a fight with my brother and sister, and she picked up a baby carriage and threw it down to get their attention, and throw it at him, just made a noise, and it caused her to miscarry. So I had to get in here in time, so when I eventually met Sasha, I wouldn't be ridiculous, a ridiculous gap in age. He's already 14 years older than me, so I tried to come in 52. He'd have been 12, but now I finally made it February 6th of 54, and that was the month that Eisenhower started to have contact. And we won't go into that now, but we'll explore these stories at a future time. So this is the story of how Eisenhower was, what airfield, anyway, the base he was at, and the ETs came down, and they had meetings, and the extraterrestrials apparently made an agreement with Ike and with the military to begin the human abduction experience, abducting humans, and apparently, probably Theresa and I were part of that agreement, that we were taken. There we go, taken. So it was interesting when we pieced our story together, Theresa and I, that we both have a thing where we were told that you were tracked coming in, just like Allie in the Steven Spielberg series. I was told by a whistleblower that he said, well, we knew when you were coming in, and I had not seen Taken. It wasn't until about 2 or 3 years later I rented the whole series because I don't have television. And I went, oh my goodness, it's right in there too. You were tracked coming in. And then when I met Theresa, or when Theresa and I started unpacking your stories, she said, yeah, I was tracked coming in. So apparently the powers that be, the Illuminati, the Anunnaki, the extraterrestrials, they can track the soul signatures and they know where they're coming in. So we'll talk about that later in future shows about how the soul signature meets up with the physical signature, the DNA signature of the body. So refusal call. The hero tries to refuse adventure. So when I first got here, I remember struggling to stand up in my crib. And when I finally stood up, and I was kind of conscious and aware at that point, I was a little baby, but also an eternal being. And I said, oh no, I'm not here again. But there I was here. So part of the background of my story is that my grandfathers on both sides were Masons. And it goes back in our the history of America. There were Masons all through. And this part here about Lincoln. My uncle Gideon Wells was the Secretary of the Navy under Lincoln. And so this is my early incarnation. Give you a little background here. So Gideon Wells is right here. I don't know if you can see me circling it. And the back is young Tad Lincoln. I had a memory of being at Lincoln's death scene. And I finally, I got that when I went to one of those, every week we would do hypnosis and regression. And as you do it over time, your psyche becomes aware that you're trying to recover memories, and it starts activating. So once you're doing these weekly meditations and these weekly groups, and you're working with the Akashic records and the white masters and all these different entity sources, beings, both material and physical and eternal, you start getting these memories. So what I recalled was I was sitting under these tables right here, and was later I found this artist rendition of the room where Lincoln died, and I was sitting under the table with Tad Lincoln, and I was playing with these tin toy soldiers, and I looked up at a certain point, I'll go back, and I saw Lincoln leaving his body, and I looked around the room, and nobody noticed his soul leaving, but I could see it. So when I researched this further, there were these two young boys that used to play with the Lincoln children. And based on the age, I was Halsey Cook Taft. So I discovered who I was in a previous incarnation because it made sense. I was the one that was playing with him. And the reason why I was there is because the Lincoln boys were kind of wild. And Tad was the only one left. His older brother, Willie, had just died a little bit before him. And so they had me come in to calm him down as his father was passing. And I pacified him to a degree. So I witnessed Lincoln leaving his body. And then Gideon Wells basically was the strategist that saved the United States and kept it together during the war. Okay. And then I remember dying. And I don't think I had an incarnation before Janet in 54, but there's a possibility. We think in terms of reincarnations as it being linear, but actually we have simultaneous lives in many realms, dimensions, planets, vibratory frequencies. So it's not necessarily that you go from one to the other. So as I told before, they knew it was coming back, so they were looking for me. So here, this is not me. None of these are me. That's another picture, another story. I don't have any of my baby pictures. I kind of look like this one right here. I was a little bald-headed baby for a long time. So that's the other thing. I was born February 6, 54. And yesterday was my 70th birthday. Happy birthday to me. So in 54, I was born in Pittsburgh, and I remember this very clearly. My grandmother and grandfather came and took me to the Masonic Temple in Pittsburgh. Now, why do I remember this? I have no idea. I'm a young child. I'm February. I'm not even a month old. But like I said, we are these individual bodies, but we're also eternal beings. So I was kind of still in my eternal self, integrating into the baby form. And so I remembered my parents, my grandfather and grandmother came and got me. It was very cold. I was bundled up. So this is a summer picture, but they handed me off to my grandparents, and I was less than a month old. And so they took me to this a room that's kind of similar to this. And I remember this very big, shiny, really like this shiny table. And about 20 people were able to sit around this. And they were dressed something like this. They were formally dressed. And it was all men, just a bunch of men. And my grandfather, who was the head of the Pittsburgh Masons, took his place at the beginning of the table. And they set me down on the table, and I kind of like shape-shifted into almost a young girl form. This is 20-something, but a young form. And I was standing up on the table. It wasn't a hologram, but I was a baby. It was about 18 inches long, standing up, and I was addressing all these men. And I told them, I don't have the exact message, but I did some hypnosis on it. And it's not time to reveal the whole message. But I basically told them, kind of like the jig is up, the game's over, and there's nothing that they can do. And they were kind of terrified. And so we left it at that. So I went back into my baby form. My grandparents picked me up and took me back to my parents, and nothing more was said. But I did do some regression on that to try to get more information. And it's like, it's not time to get the whole message. You can kind of get the gist of it, but not the whole message. But one thing I did get is they weren't allowed to kill me. I had to be permitted to grow up. Now, if you guys have any questions at any point, just raise your hand.
Yeah. I was going to say,
I thought we were doing an interview. That's where we get to ask you questions and then you talk.
Okay, so stop. Ask me questions.
Well, okay, go ahead, TJ. You go first.
Well, Janet, regarding this, the way that you present your story is the way that we know long-term probably is a great way to show people how you grew up. I think what we're going to get into is why you're experiencer and how you relate to the rest of the world, so they'll understand that this is pretty normal. My question would be then, how do you see everybody? Some people come and go, some do, some may be reincarnate, some may just be out-of-body experiencers, some may be near-death experiencers. And we're sort of clumping it all together, which isn't what Bret's accustomed to. And I know he wants to interview you and ask you certain questions to connect the dots. So, but for me, real quick, maybe you have a short answer on how do you see everything that you've experienced thus far in these photos bringing you closer together as a full-time, lifelong experiencer?
This is part of the journey. This is what I am not unique. This is a common story. I've interviewed 1,200 people on the show. I've been on many shows. I've gone to 25. I went to the Bay Area UFO Congress with the one that you were at, Bret, before with what was her name? Jackie?
Victoria Jack.
Victoria Jack. Yes. And Victoria invited me on the show back then on the stage. She said, I love having new people. So we got to talking, and I just said, I'm not ready. I was terrified getting up on stage. I said, not yet. I'll let you know when I'm ready. So I've been piecing this together because this is the hero's journey, which we're all in our own ways on the hero's journey. And we're here to do our mission and to contribute to existence and co-create with Source, with God and Universal Consciousness, to hopefully wake up in the middle of the journey and understand what this is about. So
go ahead and flip through a couple more questions and we'll let Bret, you're a professional interviewer and a professional journalist. How do you foresee where would you like to see this interview go?
Well,
Story.
I'm sure you know a little bit more about Janet than I do, but I have lots of questions. And
Sure. Ask
so
away.
the first thing that comes to mind is, when were you at the Bear UFO Expo? Because that's where I grew up and sprouted my antlers. Was Victoria
Okay.
Jack
I
gave
met
me my first shot.
I met Sasha in 1997, moved in with him, and I believe we went that first year, or maybe the second year. We went to a conference in Santa Fe, where Sitchin was. So we were at the very first Sitchin certification program. We were part of that. We knew Cody and Robin Johnston, who headed up the Prophets conferences.
Oh,
And
right.
I had met them when I was in Pennsylvania, and I had always wanted to meet them in person. So when I landed here living with Sasha in 1997, and I met him at a Tantra conference at the it was called Loving More. It was a polyamory network, and I met him there, and we fell in love, and I ended up moving in with him. And so he said, I want you to meet my best friends. And then I discovered they were Robin and Cody Johnson, head of the Prophets Conference. And I said, oh my God, I've been wanting to meet them all my life. And he said, well, they're coming over for dinner. So it was interesting. And then they said, well, have you ever heard of Zechariah Sitchin? I said, yeah, I've heard of Zechariah Sitchin. Because when I was at the Penn State UFO discussion group, which I organized with a woman named Beth, we got a room at the Penn State University at night. They would gift you a room if you wanted to do any kind of adult continuing education. We signed up. They gave it to us. We had about 20 to 40 students every week. I think it was every Thursday. We went for like 2 or 3 hours. So we were carting in they didn't even have a television. We had to cart in a television. We would record episodes on our VCR and present them to the group, and then we'd have a Q&A. We had Phil Klass was attacking us. Remember Phil Klass? Yeah, he was attacking us. He had one of his friends was a professor at Penn State University, and we invited him in, and we were doing debates. And he was a professor. I was just Janet, one of my Janet, and we were all kind of going through this information, and he was just very adamant and threatening. Then I decided to host Linda Moulton Howe, who I'd heard about, and my husband at the time was kind of wealthy, and he said, "Sure, let's do it." And he had a audiovisual company that it was part of his family's. They basically had built a lot of Penn State College. They built the university building. They were third generation contractors, and a lot of the streets were named after them in the park. They were the Smith family. Anyway, so he said, well, let's do it. So I was able to do it. We flew her in, put her in a hotel. We had ABC, CBS, and NBC. That's all there was back then, 3 networks. So there I was on radio. They said, well, we need someone to interview about this. And so I said, well, and I asked Beth, who's kind of reminds you of you, TJ, but Beth is really shy. Not like you're out there, but it was like we were doing it together, and we went on. And of course, when you're on the radio back in 1990, what was it, 92, 93 maybe? Nobody believed in UFO. They just thought we were crazy. So we were getting attacked left and right, but it was very successful. We've had about 400 or 500 people filled this auditorium. I got a big auditorium, and we had ABC, NBC, CBS there, and all networks came and interviewed us. So then that was kind of like first event that I put on. And then I was married and miserable. My husband was kind of, I don't want to say a bad thing about it. It just wasn't a good relationship. So I met a man on the internet. I had a internet account in 1992, 93, because I worked at Penn State University. In those days, only the government and universities had internet accounts. I went, internet, what's that? And my boss was very sympathetic. He said, well, let me show you. So as soon as I discovered the internet, I just stayed inside. It was winter. Why go out anyway? I brought my lunch, and I would go in early and stay late. I was just addicted even back then. I met this man on the internet who was very magical. He was able to astrally project. He had been he had been the head of Silver Mind Control, or he had been very high up in the organization, and he knew how to do all the meditation, levitation, astral projection. And he told me how he was able to astrally project to women that have astral sex. Well, I said, oh, yeah? Yeah, come to me. Bring it on. I had nothing to lose. So I was in bed, and I go into this later in this PowerPoint, and I was in bed falling asleep, and I felt somebody tapping on my, literally on my butt. And my eyes went open, and I was like, well, thank God my husband was on the other side of the bed, and I just said, in my mind, I said, is that you, Ed? And I said, oh, so come on in. I wanted to experience astral sex. I didn't even believe in it, right? And the next thing I know, it felt like a physical penis penetrating. I had what's called a Kundalini awakening. I didn't know what that was. And that kind of launched my tantric path. I started studying that. What was that? It blows out your chakras. Your energy comes out your crown chakra. You start to remember, more about who you are as an eternal being, your past life, your connection to God, Source, Universal Consciousness. So
that was a lot you just said, because that right there in a nutshell, the chakras and all the energy and how it opens you up, and that started you on a spiritual path, did it not?
Oh yeah, I've been in a spiritual path my whole life, but that was like validation, proof that the things I had which are in this presentation. I should go to the mothership so we can
go ahead if you want.
But it was I was looking for validation my entire life about the phenomena that's been happening my entire life. And, from my awareness, there weren't a lot of other people having experiences. There were a few people here, and there were people talking about ghosts. I would just look for anything and everything that, I could learn about that. I started with Von Däniken. I went to 2 of the early Star Trek conferences. I started watching Star Trek when I was 12. I was so excited that we were finally going to have an intelligent extraterrestrial. I was so tired of green slime monsters and all that stuff. I had fallen in love with The Day the Earth Stood Still. The original broadcast was in 51, so I was born in 54. So I guess I saw a repeat when it was on television. I don't think anybody was in the room with me. I don't know why I found it. I think I've been guided my entire life. I firmly believe that Theresa and I have been guided by these forces, these sources, to help us become aware and conscious. So I said, that's it. The Day of the Earth, that is it. Klaatu Barada Nikto. I never forgot that. And
Day of the Earth Stood Still, right?
The first one, not the Keanu Reeves. That was bullshit. Sorry, Keanu. But
movies are movies.
Well, Robert Wise, they were probably insiders. What I learned early on is people like Von Däniken and Robert Wise and Heinlein and Asimov and Roddenberry. They were all insiders, and they were getting information, which the only thing they were allowed to do in those days was to fictionalize it and put it forth in our science fiction. So those messages were for you, Bret, to become aware of what's actually going on in the cosmos.
Interesting.
So.
We're much older, right, Janet, than Bret, folks.
Well, Bret,
I wouldn't say it by years on the planet, meaning elders, but we're definitely his elders and on the planet at this time. But it does make for difference in how our journeys go forward and putting this together, Bret, for you. Well, let Bret ask you another question, because
ask me a question, Bret, and then I'll
and you can be finding your if you want to, Janet, you can put your your pictures up while Bret's talking to you.
Okay,
Well,
wait.
I'm fascinated about Sitchin, right? I've seen Sitchin speak a couple times. I've interviewed him on the phone. I actually at one point was a certified Sitchin scholar as well. At this stage, I'd probably have to get recertified because it's been, shoot, I saw him in LA in like, 99 or 2000, something like that.
Yeah.
And but I was pretty blown away by Sitchin and what that meant. What was it about Sitchin's work that really grabbed you, and why do you think that his work is very important?
Well, I've been arguing the Bible since I was a child. I read Edgar Casey. I would bring out verses and say, well, what about reincarnation? Here it is in the Bible. Uh, uh, my family loved to study the Bible. And so you would bring your different texts and verses and say, what does this mean? What does that mean? I never quite got religion. I would go to, wait, did you move?
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I was looking for your pictures. Sorry.
Oh.
I was going to see if you could find some more of your
Oh,
pictures
yeah. Well,
with Sakurai Sitchin on them.
I don't have anything with Sitchin right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I was exposed to Edgar Cayce, who had alternative stuff about the Bible, and I mean he was a very firm Christian, but he still said, "Well, what about this? What about that?" And Von Daniken, what about this? What about that? In 70, let's see, when did I actually discovered Sitchin before I discovered Sasha. So in what was that, 77,
12th
76,
12th planet was 76.
Yeah. Okay. So the 12th planet, I discovered that I have an older brother, 7 years older. We were studying all this. We were studying science fiction and ufology and paranormal since I was born. I mean, the three of us, or the two of us, were studying all that. So when we met Sitchin, part of the inner circle group, we were having lunch with him. We were, having all these private dinners with him because we knew Cody and Robin. So Sitchin invited Dr. Lessin, who has a PhD in anthropology from UCLA, to create a educational program. He was probably in his 80s at that time. He realized I don't have that much longer to be on this planet, and I need to, start preparing to pass the torch to other people so the work will continue. So I was here living with Sasha in September of 1997. And here I am, an experiencer, and I'm thinking, well, how do you tell your new boyfriend, husband, to be that you're, and they didn't call it experience. You've been abducted by aliens. That's what we said back then. And so I had Gods of Eden by William Bromley, and I thought, well, that kind of summarizes it a little bit better than Sitchin, because Sitchin's kind of techie, kind of like a textbook. So I put that on the back of the toilet and I just left it there. And then one day, Sasha came out and he says, "Is there more?" I go, "Yes, there is." There's a whole series of them. Because at the Penn State UFO discussion group, I brought my brother up who had absorbed Sitchin, much like Sasha. And he came up and did a presentation for us on Sitchin. I didn't have it mastered like he did. He had it mastered. And he spoke for 3 hours, and he didn't even have a single note. He did the Q&A, he did the explanation. So that was my big brother. So there was Sasha, and so we went to that first Santa. By the time he got to the first certification program in Santa Fe, Jennifer Stein was doing a documentary, and so she interviewed Sasha, and there was what's the professor? Not the lawyer with the white Daniel Sheehan, the guy from UFO Congress.
The Vatican.
Huh?
Was he from the Vatican, or he was a Jesuit that worked with the Vatican?
No. Daniel Sheehan, the lawyer that has been.
Daniel Sheehan.
Daniel Sheehan was there. The guy from UFO Congress. Anyway, the bunch of people were there. Richard Hoagland came. I was working the door. Here comes Richard.
You've met so many people.
I've met. It's like it's
when
just
they remember
people I've met, because I've been doing this for 25 years, 35. I know 30 years now, right? It's like Sasha and I said, I want to go to these conferences, and we worked for ourselves. So we had our own schedule, and we'd say we're going, and we would, do sessions with people. We were tantra teachers and relationship counselors. And if you want to go somewhere, you just have more students, have more clients, and save your money and get on the plane. So I've never been afraid to just do it. Like, get on the plane, do it. If you get guidance to do something. And often I'd say, okay, God, if you want me to go, I need some help this time. I don't have enough money or whatever. And literally we would walk down to the mailbox at the end of the road and open the mailbox. It's a good half a mile from here. And there'd be a check from something weird, like a client that owed money from 10 years ago. And said, I finally got a good job. And one guy sent $900 one time. One time we got $3,000 from some kind of escrow. It was things that you didn't even know was there, and they would magically appear. And I'll go into the magic of the UFO field, because we have, religion, science, and we have this magic that occurs when you kind of get in the flow of manifesting. So what was the question again?
Well, the Experiencers Network, we can talk about that, Janet, because you brought in a whole new encompassing era with the alien civilizations and Dr. Bruce Maccabee, which my line of questioning goes more towards the groups prior to, with APRO and CUFOS and all of that as investigators.
Background on what happened with the journey to awaken. So, because there was one episode I want to cover.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll just go through this real quick. So early on, I had these conscious memories. I started getting visitations. I was levitating. I was actually flying around the room, which I later suppressed because it was like people aren't supposed to levitate. But years later at a conference, somebody came up and grabbed the mic and said, "Hey, has anybody else ever levitated?" And we all looked at him like it was crazy. He said, "Well, if anybody's levitated, meet me at the clock at the back of the room." And when I went back there, I said to Saj, "I'm going." When I went back there, and then that we broke for lunch or something. There were like 12 or 13 people there, and we all said, "You levitated too." So it seems like if you're doing things that are out of the norm, you suppress the memory because you don't want to be criticized and made fun of. So when I was about 18 months old, a bunch of beings came to my crib, literally, and they said, because I was talking too much, I was talking in a level way beyond my years. I was freaking out my mother. My mother thought she had given birth to the demon seed. She wanted to kill me, or she hoped I died. So there was an intervention. The extraterrestrials came and said, "Okay, we're going to intervene." So they all kind of came to the crib, one after the other. And I looked at them like a puja. I looked them in the eyes. We looked into each other's souls. And they said, "It's time for you to go become human." Because none of us are human. We're all extraterrestrials, but we don't remember that. We just remember where we're focusing, which is in this body as a human. So there was a loud clap of thunder or something. And then it was like this connection was broken. I could no longer speak like I was speaking. It was like in glossaria. I screamed. I started crying. I tried to explain to Mommy what would happen. And I just kind of faded into this form, and it was for my own safety, because if I would have kept going, that she probably would have done something to me, because she was going mad. She was always kind of a little bit crazy. So she was and I love her and I forgive her, and she's dead. But it's like, yeah, I needed some protection. So anyway, this is a meeting with the mentors. So I'm going to just go through this. So one of the things that I kept seeing in my visions wasn't like the typical UFOs. I kept seeing these mothership vimanas. And so I researched vimanas. And basically all through history, we've had these ships that look like cities that would come down. And in India, these big stone buildings may actually be UFOs that have landed, and they disconnected the mechanism. So what better way to bring a building and build a building is to bring it, and look how elaborately they're carved. A lot of the things that I see on other planets, they just have, they're so advanced that their artists are just given free reign. They've got their needs met, and so everybody can be very artistic. But I researched vimanas, and so here's some things representative of Olympus, the Anunnaki, the gods, and I saw this representation. And then it led me to this, which was fascinating about of Moses. So they're depicting that there was a vimana that came down and is God up on the mountain and spoke to everybody with a hologram. So you can see these references all through time. So in 58, so let's go through this quickly. I was picking flowers out in the side yard at my house. I like to, I like to make bouquets for Mom. And I was coming in, and I got transported up to, and if this is good representation of what the ship looked like. None of the typical UFO stuff. These were very elaborate, ornate, and they glowed, and they had their internal light system. I was taken to a theater for what I realized is sometimes when you're having extraterrestrial contact, they make things for you in the moment. They can manifest anything. And so they created a theater, and they greeted me like I was returning royalty, and they were very kind to me. And so they projected, it was more than a screen. It was like three-dimensional. You could see it, you could feel it, you could hear it, smell it, taste it. Everything was, all the senses were activated. But they were showing me 24 different multiverses. And the first one they showed was the Earth was blowing up and it turned into stardust. Next one, there was less destruction, more life, but they kept getting worse and worse. And a lot of the UFO contactee experiencers report that they are shown destruction of the Earth. And it was like at one point, nuclear holocaust, and the whole planet blew up. And it showed people trying to escape. And I was seeing, hearing, smelling, and I was overwhelmed with emotion. I'm just crying. Tears are going down my face. I'm only 4 years old. I'm 4 years old, but it's like when you don't forget things, you don't forget things. And then at one point it started to shift, and it started getting, okay, that destruction's over. Here's people surviving, scenes of survival, kind of apocalyptic, but people were still alive. Animals were still alive. And it kept getting better and better and better. And beautiful alternative future histories, where we're going, our potentials. I stopped crying. I started to relax. Then it got almost like cartoonish. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. These realities they were shown is like there's nothing left to do. And it was like, it's not real. It's not real. Well, what is real, right? So at that point they said, there are endless timelines. This is just a sample. There's 24 we showed, but these are just a sample of potential and what may be. And they said, well, which reality did you choose? And I was confused. Am I choosing for all of existence, for all creation? Am I choosing for myself? What do you mean choose? But there it was. I was being invited to choose. So I had liked the kind of like the third, almost utopian alternative, because it had a lot left to do, right? It wasn't like everything was done for you. So I wanted life to be interesting. And so I said, well, I chose that one. I mean, I didn't know what that meant. But at that point, they said, okay, your job's done. You can go home. So they brought me, and before they left, they said, when you came up, you were in alternative one, where when you finally get to a real theater, because I'd never been to a theater yet. Back in the 50s, you didn't really take your children, babies and stuff, to theaters until they were old enough to appreciate it. They said that in the first timeline, the first movie I would see was Hercules Unchained. No, Hercules, but now I wasn't going to see the first movie until Hercules Unchained. And I never forgot that movie because it was in this theater that shortly after that premiered, they tore down that theater. It was gone. So there we go. So I finally get to the theater and they go, oh, they showed me this on the ship. This is the Mandala Effect, right? Where you go, you're confused, like what reality am I in? And there's usually a critical incident that you go, oh, okay, we're like in a virtual reality, and we're in these timelines, and we can shift and choose the alternative outcomes. So we are we are driving this show. We are creating this in some level. And when we get to that level, we become co-creators with God. But most of us chose to come into the human level and kind of go unconscious and just, become victim or victimizer. We just are along for the ride. So, okay, so this is kind of what Pittsburgh looked like back in the 50s. And at the very end, it was like this incredible sunset, like I'd never seen, because the air was very polluted in the 50s in Pittsburgh. I had a lot of problems. And so they gave me the scenic route, and then they brought me home, and they said to me, and this is another message that they often get, a voice from the beings on the ship told me, you have come to do that which will benefit all of humankind. It's very biblical. And so I was like, oh, good, that my life has meaning and purpose. I'm going to do something important here in this life. Anyway, it's just an example. And one of the messages, we're all different but equally important, right? Each and every one of us is equally important to all the others in creation. And if there's a piece of the puzzle missing, your eye will go to the missing piece. So here's like the largest puzzle in the world, and they discovered after something, oh no, we're missing a piece. Well, that's you. You are the missing piece of the puzzle to make all of existence and creation. Okay, so that's enough of that. Okay, back to you guys. Questions? I can't hear you, TJ. Did you mute?
Yeah, I was telling Bret to go ahead. Bret, how do you foresee all of that as a typical experiencer's story? But she's got some nice pictures there, demographics. So how can we help Janet with this interview forward?
I've heard a lot of contactee stories at this stage. All of them are fascinating in each their own way. I think maybe the first one I really got into was Whitley Strieber's The Secret School book.
Yes.
Where he described at night he would be transported or taken somewhere. I think at one point he was actually riding his bike out to a place where he was picked up, and then he goes to schooling, comes back, wakes up in the morning, and then does his regular routine, right?
Wow.
What I find fascinating, Janet, about your story, many things, of course, but the first thing that comes to mind is, where do you think you were as a soul before you were born?
I definitely had a number of past lives. I've recovered about 5 of them. I think I was coming into Earth to influence historical events. I won't go into that now because it's kind of lengthy about where I was. I did uncover that lifetime as Horatio, or no, Taft, the other boy, not Horatio, the other one. But I think like we get trapped in where was I in before I came here, like in a linear thing. But if you read the series of books called Life Between Lives by Dr. Newton, right, by Dr. Newton.
Yeah.
Okay, you read that? Well, anyway.
Life Between Life, was that?
Life
okay,
Between Lives. Yeah, there's.
He did Journey of Soul. Newton did Journey of Souls.
There were 5 books he did, so there are a bunch of names. And they progressed everybody to the point where you go to, but you have to hypnotize people, and they get into this altered state of consciousness, and then you can take them to at a certain point. It takes about 4 or 5 hours, and then you go to Life Between Lives. And what they found is that souls, when they die, it doesn't matter your religion, creed, color, race, or country of origin, we have similar experiences. When you die, you're met by your guide. Every single soul has a guide, a personal guide. And then depending on how advanced you are, you might go to your council meeting, you might go right to your group. So you have a group soul that you go and you reintegrate with your current experience, and you compare the life you just had with the lives you had before, and how it correlates with all the members in your soul group, which are somewhere between 10 and 30 souls that you tend to reincarnate with on a regular basis, lifetime after lifetime. But you also have like another, so your soul group is a center, and then you have these surrounding soul groups. So, 500, 1,000, whatever it is. And these people tend to come in and out of your lives lifetime after lifetime. And there's a point where you go and you compare, like group therapy, right? You compare, oh, I'm so sorry, I killed you. I'll
That's the Michael Newton Institute, right?
Right, the name. I forgot the name.
When you said that.
At some point, you stand before each other and you merge. You literally merge into each other, like the total Vulcan mind meld. But it's like all your molecules go
blazing,
and you are each other, and then you back out. And you go, oh, I am so sorry. I will never do that to you or anybody else in any lifetime ever. And you keep doing that until. So what the key point is, there's a part of your soul. So we think of our soul, one whole thing. No, a part of your soul always remains on the other side. That's why you can die and you're met by someone who's still alive. But that it's a fractal. We have fractals of our souls that come down and have experiences. And the advanced souls can have fractals in more than one body on the earth at the same time. I had sex with my fractal when I asked, who is this person? Why are they so familiar? And they said, that's you in a male form. I went, and as soon as that kind of a external answer came, I went, oh, that's right, that me. And then you could be on other planets. And so, I remember lifetimes of flying, being in the ocean, living in caves like salamanders or something. All these different things that you can access and experience. So where was I? I'm where I am now. We all we simultaneously exist in many places and many times. Time is an illusion of the third dimensional physicality. So we're there. We're simultaneous having these experiences, but we focus on being here now in this incarnation so we can be present for the people that are in our lives in each moment, and be aware and experience what we need to experience with one another. Love each other.
Okay, thank you.
You're incarnating and reincarnating, and we can say justification for even being a soul, but there are many life coaches now, and those that are in esoterics, and what we're doing with Bret Lueder with Esoteric Guide and Janet Lessin, Experience Network, and then our alien civilizations exist, and Alien Contact Organization, my ACO Club. But folks, it's all about us, and we see the planet, and we know things are happening. We want to change, but we have to change ourselves first. And Janet, do you want to only do a couple of minutes here, because we've got 2.5 minutes left if we're only going to do an hour this time? But
right,
where do you want to go?
I left it at this. I mean, I just have like my commercial.
Okay.
But last question before we get to that point. Any other things you want to tie up or make comments or questions from the two of you?
Bret Lueder?
We're going to have to do another show because
Okay.
Same with TJ too, right? Because there's just so many places to go with this. But just because we only have a couple minutes left. 1997 was a real key year, and it keeps coming up in discussions with other people. And so I find the synchronicity with you saying that you met Sasha in 97.
Yes.
I think you made a comment you were living with him in September of 97.
Yes.
Something like that. Okay, so just two other quick things.
Sure.
In October of 97 was the culmination of the magical battle between Anton LaVey and the Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City, California.
Mm-hmm.
And Anton passed on Halloween Eve at the culmination of the battle at like 3 a.m, something like that. And this apparition supposedly appeared to the church people saying that Anton had passed away, right?
Right.
After this, they were battling over the legal spiritual rights of his daughter at the time, who was named Ray LaVey, who was trying to escape from Anton LaVey. So that happened in 97. And then also I just did a recent interview with Dr. Len Horowitz, who is a proponent, as you may be well aware, of the 528 love frequency. And so he met Dr. Joseph Palaio in like the spring of 97. And Palaio claims to have been given this key to defeat the enemy, this 528 frequency, these other 3 notes that were in the at the time the 6-note musical scale from the Bible called the solfeggio scale. So Puleo got 3 more notes to make it a 9-note scale. And then those Horowitz and Puleo met, and Puleo thought that it was Horowitz that was going to bring this. He was the guy that was going to bring it to the world. And then when I talked to Horowitz recently, he's saying that, you know, he himself was praying for the Achilles heel of the Illuminati. Like, God, give me the weapon that's going to take down the dark forces so we could free humanity. So that happened through the summer of 97. So it's just interesting how Sitchin's passing the torch to you guys roughly around that time. These other kind of things are happening. It's like 97, I think, was a really big year for spiritual stuff to be moving around.
May I just mention something too?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Well, there's files from the request for the Central Intelligence Agency about Project Blue Book, December 97 special report, MK Ultra, also the 6th of December. And then we have operations, and we have several other things going on, all having to do with UFOs. And it's very interesting if you're look up the FOIA request log for the Central Intelligence Agency, October 1997 through January 1999. So there was a lot going on. Project Blue Book special reports, MK Ultra, all of that kind of stuff. It's actually
Tom in 97.
These were all files.
Yeah, but didn't you meet Tom in 97?
I met him in 95. But Area 51, Roswell, Psi Agents, Majestic 12, Octopus was November 97, Roswell. There was all kind of things happening. I don't understand these people that say they don't have information when it's so listed, reimagining what's out there. But we had FOIA requests online. So these are projects and notes. Interestingly enough, that
you married Tom. I thought you told me 97. You married Tom.
I met. I married him. No, I met him April 9th, 1995. And by 1997, we were on our project.
Married, right?
We were on our project for Area 51 and Roswell, Men in Black, and all of that. The Robertson.
That we'll cover in a future episode. What happened?
12.
Yeah, on the Project Roswell.
Right. And we wrote the book Roswell UFO Encounters, and then the one you have, Allied Command Odyssey. So would you like to mention before we go?
Well, here's some of the book. And then, Brett, we need to get some pictures of yours, and I can put that at the end of a slide.
So he has that one right behind him. That shoulder.
Anyway, I'll go real quick through this. So I last year I was writing, and the year before writing a lot of books. So I wrote, and I figured out how to write faster. And I've been writing for all this time. So I pulled them together, right? I've been writing for 20, 30 years. So I pulled a lot of the stories together, and I finished these. These are the ones I finished in the last 2 years.
Beautiful covers. Absolutely gorgeous.
Absolutely beautiful covers, yes.
And I don't like that as much, but I finished this one as well. This is another book in the Anunnaki series. I'm going to do this one in 20. This is when when Nima is young, and then this is her when she's in her full power, and she becomes Ninharsag, the Lady of the Mountain. And then, of course, this is a simple, the books that Dr. Lessin and I did together. We actually have 4 books on Tantra. I don't have the covers here. I have another book called Pierce the Soul, Dance of Souls, Pierce the Veil, that I wrote around 2009. And then these are just some graphics of the different covers. I like to play with graphics. And then Sasha and I, this is mainly Sasha's EnkiSpeaks.com. He works on that every night. And then mine is Dragon at the End of Time. So we both have our vessel for creativity. And of course, our thing is Aquarian media. Yeah. So anyway, I like to play with graphics. I have a
That's
good graphic artist. We get graphic
Yes,
artists.
you do.
Yes.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
let's get off of that. We'll go to faces. There we go. You want that faces or this faces? Which one do you like better?
Bret, grab your book, if you will.
I don't have. Let's see. I do
I'll
have.
grab mine.
Which one do you have?
Let's see
Yeah.
this. Oh, let's
Oh.
grab a couple things here. I can grab a couple things
Yeah, grab a couple things.
as I'm destroying my shelf. This is my first ever lecture DVD. It's two lectures that I gave at the. You can tell how cheesy it is. I just was learning. I did this on a Word program actually, like back in 2000. I think like 8 or 9. There's the two posters from the Bay Area UFO Expo.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Victoria Jack gave me my first shot. I'll never forget that. May she rest in peace. More recently, I've done this DVD. It's an American Law primer, and I did a disc on the magic behind the all caps name and what that was intended to do. And I also did another more technical disc on how to use a demur in a traffic ticket case, and it applies to other cases too. But a demur basically challenges the jurisdiction of the court. There's also a booklet in here too that I did. It's an article that I wrote for Paranoia magazine and doubled for Phenomena magazine, and it was about my experience with Andrew Basiago and how I hired him to wrap up this old traffic case in Washington, and then that whole thing just fell apart when I began to realize through our conversations that Project Pegasus wasn't going into the future and identifying who the presidents were, and then coming back to the present time and finding those children and bringing them into the program to groom them for those positions. That's what Andrew Basiago said. What I began to realize was that they were actually placing presidents in power. And so I wrote an article called "The Making of an American Dynasty," and that was for Phenomena magazine and also Paranoia magazine. But that's a booklet inside here. And then the only I don't have copies of the UFO Guide because they all sold out. But I do have new copies of my first book, "Song in Your Heart: Story of the Search for the Lost Note." And it's about music. It's essentially right, but it's about music and then particular musicians which I call the roots reggae rastas, and those are the Rastafarians that play music, and they do a certain kind of reggae called roots reggae that has a specific kind of a rhythm that mimics the heartbeat, and it instills an altered state of consciousness in the listener, and when they're in an altered state, then they imbue them like with more real news kind of thing, like they're singing about Babylon and they're singing about the dark forces coming in. It's kind of like one of the reggae guys explained it to me, like in Trenchtown in Jamaica, the reggae guys were like the news anchors that we would consider, we watch maybe 6 o'clock news or something. They would go to a reggae show and the reggae guys would be singing about the events around town, reporting on the police, what crime bosses were doing what. And then on the bigger picture, what like the UN was all about, or the IMF. So I was fascinated by that, and this is book 1. Book 2 will be out in probably a couple of years now because I'm a little bit sidetracked with the current book, and that's called Agents of Ascension UFO PR, which is about how public relations has controlled the UFO narrative from the beginning. So.
Bob Marley, One Love, the movie's coming out on Valentine's Day, folks. So Bret Lueder's book would be very timely if you'd like to read it, and tell them how to get that book.
Okay. So right now, you can get a hold of me on Facebook. That's kind of my web page, because I've tried to do 2 web pages and I just get hacked every time. So each of the 2 times. So it's just something that I haven't concentrated on. I want to get to that at some point, but I've got some books I need to crank out first, and I'm doing my own show, of course, and then I'm part of this wonderful group of people right here. I feel blessed to be part of this. So the website's probably going to wait for a little bit, but so hit me up on Facebook. I pay free shipping, but they're $30, inflation, right? It's got full color pictures and stuff. Look, there's me with Luciano right there. You see with me with little sideburns. We were all young once, right?
We're young.
Yeah.
Did you know yesterday was Bob Marley's birthday and Ronald Reagan's birthday and my birthday?
Wow.
Really? You shared the birthday with those two individuals?
And Bob
Yep.
Marley, huh?
Bob
Wow.
Marley, Ronald Reagan, and Janet Care
And
Lessin.
Jim Thomas, my brother-in-law.
And your
Wow.
brother.
69, yeah.
Very
Right
interesting.
here in Buda, Texas, beautiful Buda, Texas, right south of
Right.
Austin, where I live now.
Your books, Teresa.
Oh, my books. Oh, they're all over.
Okay,
all
next
kind of
time.
ET books,
Next time, bring
UFO
up the
books.
books and show us a picture of them. Okay.
Yeah, I had it. How I could do it was actually with my background, but I don't really know, how I did it, to tell you the truth. Solo layout. I know what I did. You know what I did? I did settings, and I did virtual background, and then you could see my books, right?
Hey, let's get your books real quick. Yeah.
Ta-da.
Because you had the first screen, I think.
There you go.
There's a book, yeah.
Yeah, E.T. This was Ascension Masters. I did. We had Alien Contact. Of course, there's my ACO club if you want to get involved with us for the best performers and contract. We've had a lot of great musicians. Here's one of my background as Cosmic Ambassador. I have the Psychic University. And of course, our old stuff with Janet, Aquarian Radio, and we have plenty of that going on. But you know what? I had several books that people don't really know about because I never marketed them. I was never trying to sell books because people talked bad about us, bad enough about people that had UFO experiences, not to mention alien contact. But I was actually writing for UFO Digest in 2007, 10 years later. But I will show you at least one book because I've been able to keep a few. I've got several here. I should have unpacked them, but folks, I just moved from Florida to Texas. I'm back in Texas. But Janet, I'm looking. I'm sure one's going to show up here in a minute.
Don't worry
I've
about
got
it.
plenty of pictures of you, but my books, Roswell UFO Encounters. Janet, don't you have one of mine you could show?
Not handy. Oh, okay. There's a comment.
Handy. That's a shame, folks. Well, unfortunately.
Next time, just be prepared next time to show your pictures at the end. Okay, this is a good way of doing it.
Yeah, I'll show you the way I used to look, but I don't look this way anymore. That's for sure.
Isn't that interesting how we change over time? We don't look like it's hard to see. There's young Teresa. Okay. Yep. That's
me. And my books are all about Roswell UFO Encounter or UFO or Alien Contact UFO. I wrote Knowing Cosmology. So I've got a lot of books out there, folks, if you're interested. So we're all authors, and we invite you to our Authors Club. And there are people contacting me to be on our show now. We're doing our best to get us, the Power of Three, interviewed and get our stories out there. And then we'll come back to you folks and bring you on our Alien Contact Organization, ACO Club, Psychic Network, TJ Mars ET Network, and Janet and Carol Lessin. Okay, Janet, you want to go back to the Power of Three here?
We're done for today. Thank you so much. Everybody say goodbye.
Both for your time.
Love and blessings.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Yes.
Until next week.
Until next week.
Aloha.
Thank you.